Hey, what is going on, guys? And welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, where today we are on our 36th in-depth character review, where we look at the highly requested character for months upon months upon months, and that is Rey. And there's no wonder why so many people have been asking for such a long time, because many of us consider her to be one of the patron saints for free-to-play individuals in this game, and today we will unravel why she is such an important character for the beginner as well as advanced player, especially for the free-to-play player. And for those of you who are interested, I have a Patreon page where you can support me and gain access to these in-depth review materials that I use, as well as being able to hang out with me on a monthly basis where we can chat about your roster, the game, or anything else in general. So if you'd like to check that out, please feel free to do so. But let's get right into it and talk about the history of Rey in the Star Wars universe. Now, what we know so far about Rey is that she was born roughly 11 years after the Battle of Endor, and for reasons unknown at this point, at a young age, her family left her on the planet of Jakku. While on the planet of Jakku, she made her living by being a scavenger and was also known to be quite skilled with her staff, in case she was ever caught in a fight. But her life completely changed the moment she encountered a BB-8 droid, which had critical information regarding the whereabouts of Luke Skywalker and Finn, who was trying to run away from the First Order. During her journey to find Jedi Luke Skywalker, she discovered she was a Force-sensitive prodigy, and the moment she brought Luke Skywalker's father's lightsaber, she brought a new hope for the galaxy. And more is to be discovered as The Last Jedi gets released later on this year. But in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, we continue to see Rey utilize her overwhelming talent with her staff, which deals a devastating amount of damage to her enemies to the point where they become dazed. With that brief history of Rey, let's first talk about how do we unlock this character, and there are a couple free-to-play avenues that you can access quite early in the game, with the first method being several hard battles. First of all, you have the option of going to Light Side Hard Battle 2A, which is very early in the game, Dark Side Hard Battles 5D, as well as 7B. And the most popular place to farm Rey, which I got and many other people got through this way, is the guild store. For 400 guild currency, you can get 5 shards of Rey, as well as the fleet mega pack. Since she also has a shift, you can also find her character shards in that premium pack. Next up on our list is to talk about the stats of Rey before mods and abilities are considered, and as we'll see, she is heavily leaning on the offensive side, but she's also lacking in the defensive aspect, which is expected out of a really strong attacker in this game. And when examining the pros, we first see that she is fast as lightning when it comes to speed, where she is sitting at number 3 alongside Princess Leia. Average speed in this game is 127, and Rey is 40 points above this at 167, so oh so slightly below TIE Fighter Pilot. Next up on our list, we have maximum damage, and this is something beautiful for those people who love free-to-play characters, because she is numero uno for maximum damage output. Holy cow, guys. Averages 5,514, and Rey, before considering critical damage and all that lovely jazz, is at 10,400, so she will be smacking people around left and right. To prove the point further that she is quite a great attacker, we also see in maximum basic damage that she is number 9, with the average being 4,313. Rey is above that at 5,619, and the last pro that we have is that she has health steal of 10%, which is better than 0%, so having some health steal is always great than having none. And when we look at the average stats, we only have one thing sitting here, and it's armor penetration. She deals a lot of physical damage attacks, so it's kind of important, and she's kind of in the middle, where she is number 58. With the average being 51, Rey is slightly below this at 44. Now, alright guys, we gotta get onto the stuff that Chewbacca wants to cry about. And here we see her lacking in so many defensive things, but luckily her kit does address some of this. But the first elephant we have to address in the room is health. There are 114 characters in the game right now, and Rey is 113 in health, aka second from dead last. With the average being 19,338, Rey is at 13,000 390. So definitely way below the average and way below the median. And we continue to see this story when looking at protection, where she is number 95. With the average being a flat 20,000, Rey is at 13,977. And if you watched my Captain Rex's ship in-depth review the other day, I'm starting to incorporate a new stat since it is important, and that is combined health and protection. And when you combine Rey's health and protection together, we see she is number 107, with the average being 39,338. Rey's combined health and protection is 27,367. So again, definitely below what the average character has. And lastly, when it comes to armor, Rey is 85, with the average being 227. Rey is at 198, which means she will have a harder time mitigating the amount of damage that enemies are trying to apply. With those numbers out of the way, let's take a look at her kit to understand how these numbers actually play into action. And we first take a look at her basic attack, which is known as Shifting Strike. Not too much is going on here, but there is something quite important. It deals physical damage to a target enemy, and she has a 40% chance to gain foresight for 2 turns. So although she is lacking in the health, protection, and combined health and protection categories, the foresight helps her evade a few attacks, so that means she can stay in the battle a lot longer than a character who cannot gain foresight. And the next ability we have here, which I recommend you always use first, is known as Leverage. It has a 4-turn cooldown, and this deals physical damage to a target enemy, but in addition, Rey gains foresight for 2 turns if she doesn't have any positive status effects, and gains offense up for 3 turns if she does. So the reason why you want to use this first is because she is guaranteed to gain foresight, and it deals one of the biggest damage dealing attacks in the game. And it also helps get her other abilities to start working in action, as we will soon find out. But here's the next thing that can be quite a crazy attack. It is known as Flurry of Blows, also has a 4-turn cooldown, where it deals physical damage to a target enemy twice, guaranteed to do that, with a 55% chance to deal damage a 3rd time. But if Rey has any positive status effects, she will deal damage 1 additional time, and hits after the first deal have reduced damage. So a very big attack, and it's great if you need to finish someone out really quickly. And lastly, we have her unique ability, which is known as Focused Strikes. As long as she has no debuffs, Rey has a plus 25% offense, and the Zeta ability helps her inflict daze for 2 turns whenever she uses a special ability, and this daze cannot be resisted. So all the Zeta does is essentially add that minor clause for her to apply daze. Otherwise, the offense bonus is still the same. Another great thing about Rey when taking a look at the gear requirements is that she is not too crazy to gear. She is roughly below average to average difficulty, so nothing too crazy, as we first see for raid gear. Average amount of raid gear is 3 right now, and she also needs 3 pieces. She will need 2 Mark 5 fusion furnaces, 1 at gear 8, 1 at gear 9, and she will also need a Mark 6 Nubian design tech at gear 9. When checking out her gold gear requirements, this is also something very nice, because the average amount of gold gear needed is 200 pieces. Rey will need 220 pieces. However, she will need 2 Mark 8 biotech implants that are needed only at gear 11, and no gold gear is needed to get to gear 11. So none at gear 10, which is great news. And the next big important thing is purple gear. She will need 1,000 pieces of purple gear, which is definitely below the average, with the average being 1,133. Rey is number 82 in purple gear requirements, and the most popular purple piece you will need, which is quite a lot, but if you do have it, you will already have 30% of your purple gear requirements knocked out, and that is the Mark 6 hypo syringes, where you will need 300 pieces, and many of those will go to the 2 Mark 5 fusion furnaces. And then for blue, green, and white gear, she is below average for all of those categories. But guys, now it is time to move on to the subjective part of the review, where I give you my thoughts, her mortal enemies, best friends, mod setup, and Yoda's do or do not checklist. So let's first take a look at my thoughts on this character. So I've already mentioned this throughout the video, but Rey, in my opinion, is one of the most valued characters for the free-to-play individual, and especially one of the best beginner characters one can obtain during the beginning of their journey in this particular game. She is one of the fastest characters in the game, applies huge damage, gains foresight to preserve her health and protection pool as long as possible, and nowadays she can even daze her enemies when you Zeta her, and all daze means is that they will not be able to counterattack or gain turn meter, which is kind of critical in this game. I cannot stress highly enough how game-changing she is for the beginner player and for players who have yet to face those teams that have Zetas or god-tiered characters like Palpatine. For the longest time, she was the meta and has survived many meta shifts due to how universal and flexible her kit is, which makes her work great in many types of lineups. When the dodge meta was king, we all knew that feeling back then when we would try to take out Rey, but she evaded, and most of the time, the battle could be over because of that little mistake against Rey. But for those of us who face Zeta teams on a daily basis, or other demigod characters like Kenobi and Palpatine, why don't we see Rey anymore? Well, the answer is kind of simple. The current meta is not just about being a fast character that can apply big burst damage. That is more of a beginner type of thing and something that existed in a meta way back when. Her kit has just become a bit too simple, I guess, compared to everything else that has changed, but that is not to say she is horrible. Her kit has changed very little since her release, but her kit is one that has a timeless element to it where it does not become completely obsolete like many other characters that we have. The meta as it stands today favors fast teams who can deal big damage, but also apply many devastating debuffs like Darth Maul. He can apply daze to everyone and not just one character. Characters that can cleanse, dispel, gain turn meter, or feed turn meter to the team and does damage to everyone and not just a single target. There are plenty of characters that can do a lot of that in one kit, and Rey doesn't really have all that stuff in her kit. Just being able to apply big damage is not enough anymore, and although her Zeta attempts to address this, it is nowhere near the level that Darth Maul has on his daze ability, and he does not need a Zeta to start applying daze. And because of this, not many people have given her Zeta since you're not really getting a big bang for your buck, and I've talked to dozens of people and no one really has Rey Zeta, and those who do say that it's probably one of their least favorite investments in this game. The other problem that we have is that many characters can counter Rey nowadays, and we will talk about that right now in our mortal enemy section, and essentially characters that can apply shock like Count Dooku and Palpatine, as well as characters that can apply buff immunity are her biggest threats, because if she is not gaining foresight, she is not able to avoid attacks. Plus, she is not gaining the additional damage bonuses that come from her being buffed. Aside from that, pretty much any other character who can apply debuffs is a mortal enemy, and there are a ton of characters that do that nowadays, because when she is debuffed, she won't be gaining a 25% damage bonus and won't be able to apply daze, which defeats the whole purpose of her having the Zeta to begin with. Critical hit immunity from her being able to apply deadly critical attacks. Offense down can be an issue because she is not hitting as hard. Short Trooper and Baze and other tanks are also a big issue because when they're taunting, she's just applying scratches to them and she can't hit the characters like Emperor Palpatine, Captain Rex, or those who are very frail. And Stormtrooper Han, if you're a free-to-play character, if you see Stormtrooper Han on the other team, be careful because she gets a lot of attacks out, especially on flurry of blows, and you might just feed a ton of turn meter to the other team when he is taunting. But even beyond this, there are just so many other mortal enemies like cleansers and so on and so forth, but this is just a small list that I think are the biggest threats. Next up is Best Friends, and she works in so many types of lineups with so many other characters, but her true besties are those who are in the Resistance, especially if you have a Finn leader with a Zeta. She actually can be quite competitive in the top end of Arena nowadays, but characters that can give buffs are great to ensure she is always doing the most damage as possible and able to apply daze. Characters that promote evasion like Old Ben and Dooku were actually very strong back then, because if you can't hit her, she is staying around for a long time. She might be gaining turn meter, she might be gaining offense up to hit you even harder. Very deadly combos. Tenacity and Cleanse are also great to make sure no debuffs are being applied to her. Characters that call assists like Qui-Gon Jinn are great to make sure Rey's getting more attacks out, maybe a chance to gain foresight. Offense up characters to increase that damage output. Shock and buff immunity are also great for her because if she's able to have someone dispel the buffs or prevent a tank from taunting, that means she is cutting out so many things that can stand in her way. And again, Rey has a great list of friends, and this is just a small fraction that I think are really important to know about. So I'm guessing one day you will be using Rey for one reason or another, and to make sure you're using her in the best fashion, let's take a look at her mods. And when picking the mod set to choose to get your bonus, I highly recommend going with a critical damage and critical chance combo for the mods. You want to make sure she puts out as much damage as possible. If you don't have that, then you can go with offense mods or speed mods. They are also great, and health is also a good option, but I recommend doing the first one, which is critical damage and critical chance. For the primary and secondary mod bonuses, number one choice, definitely give her lots of speed. She's already a fast character, make her even faster. I really like putting protection on her. She's kind of weak in the defensive department, so protection really does go a long way. Third choice is critical damage. Let's put that damage output even further. Critical chance to make sure she has more critical damage attacks. Health is all good, but overall I do not recommend giving her any potency mods. Even though she applies a debuff on her Zeta, it is guaranteed to not be resisted, so no need for potency. And now we got one more thing to look at, and that is Yoda's do or do not checklist, and Rey is one of those few characters in the game that you could literally use for every single thing here. First of all, Arena, definitely do. Very great for people who are just starting off in the game, and even towards the later end of the game, she can still be good. Galactic War, she is a God-sent gift to knock out Galactic War, especially if you're a beginner having a hard time. Light side Cantina battles, definite do. If you're looking to get the mod challenges done for the speed mods, you will actually have to have Rey. There aren't that many resistance characters, so do. Ships is a definite do, although the Millennium Falcon Episode 7 version of the ship is not really that accessible. She is required for that ship, and if you do have that ship, it is really quite good. Now for the Rancor raid and the AAT raid, she is not a number one choice, but for the longest time before I had a lot of turn meter control characters, she was really great to get out a lot of damage. So I will say do for the Rancor raid, not a number one choice of course. AAT raid, again, not a number one choice, but if you need to help your team get some burst damage out there, Rey will definitely get the job done. And now it is time to pull up the Hall of Fame and see where Rey lands compared to all the other characters in this game. Now, if you saw my video where I ranked all of the characters in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, you may have noticed that Rey was placed in the Master category. Rey is a very solid character and one of the best beginner characters as well as best free-to-play characters in the game. However, ever since she came out, she has not developed all that much. The game has changed a lot. Although she got a Zeta, it's not all that good and not many people have invested in it, and I also recommend don't invest in it until you invest in many other top priority characters in the game. Overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'm finally glad we got to this review because I have been pushing it away for so long. If you did enjoy this video, please feel free to leave me a like and let me know down below what character you guys would like to see for our next in-depth character review. And also check out my Patreon page. If you want to hang out with me, gain some access to the materials I use for these videos, feel free to check that out. And as always, stay subscribed so you don't miss a thing, and we will talk again soon. Peace out.